Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has arrived in Beijing for a pivotal three-day summit, the first high-level meeting between Canadian and Chinese leaders in nearly a decade. Carney meets President Xi Jinping to discuss trade, investment, security, and climate change, aiming to reset strained relations. For Canada, it's a strategic move amid U.S. trade uncertainty. For China, a chance to strengthen ties with a key G7 nation. The world is watching to see if this visit can open a new chapter in Canada-China relations. To grasp the significance of Carney's visit, we must revisit the events that froze Canada-China relations. The 2018 arrest of Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou in Vancouver, on a U.S. extradition request, triggered a diplomatic crisis. China responded by detaining Canadians Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, widely seen as retaliation. The episode, dubbed hostage diplomacy, cast a long shadow over bilateral ties. Diplomatic channels froze, and public trust eroded. China imposed restrictions on Canadian exports, especially canola, citing pest concerns, widely viewed as political retaliation. Canadian farmers and exporters suffered significant losses. The standoff lasted nearly 3 years, with both sides incurring economic and diplomatic costs. The crisis ended in 2021 when Meng reached a deal with U.S. authorities and returned to China. The two Michaels were released the same day. But the damage was done. Deep mistrust lingered, and Ottawa reassessed the risk of engaging with China. The years that followed were marked by caution and minimal dialogue. Carney's visit now seeks to break this silence and chart a new course. The legacy of the Meng affair remains a cautionary tale for both countries. The challenge is to rebuild trust without forgetting the lessons of the past. Both sides know that a single incident can upend years of progress. This summit is a test of whether pragmatic engagement can overcome old wounds. The world is watching for signs of genuine reconciliation. Mark Carney's background in global finance, not politics, shapes his pragmatic approach to foreign policy. As a former central banker, he's prioritized engagement and clear-eyed national interest, what some call the Carney Doctrine. Carney's prior dealings with Chinese officials on economic issues built a foundation of mutual respect. This history gave him a unique opening for dialogue as Prime Minister. Over the past year, quiet diplomatic meetings identified areas for cooperation while acknowledging disagreements. Carney's government separates tough issues like human rights from areas where progress is possible, such as trade and climate. Critics warn against overlooking China's record, but Carney argues that dialogue is a tool, not an endorsement. The belief Canadian interests are best served by having a seat at the table. This visit is the ultimate test of that philosophy. Can pragmatic dialogue yield better results than isolation? The answer will shape Canada's China policy for years to come. The Beijing talks are ambitious, with trade at the top of the agenda. Canada seeks full restoration of market access for agricultural products and a more predictable, rules-based trading environment. Energy and natural resources are also in focus. Canada wants to position itself as a reliable supplier of LNG and critical minerals for China's green transition. Security issues, including foreign interference and cyber threats, are on the table, though deep disagreements remain. The goal is to establish clear communication channels to manage conflicts and prevent escalation. Climate change is another key area. Carney's expertise in climate finance positions Canada as a leader in green cooperation. Both countries are major players in global climate negotiations. Finding common ground on emissions, technology, and sustainable finance could anchor the relationship. Cooperation on public health and pandemic preparedness is also being explored. The hope is to build trust through shared interests, even as differences persist. This summit is about setting a new tone, one of engagement, not confrontation. The outcomes will determine if Canada and China can move from rivalry to pragmatic partnership. The world is watching for progress. The diplomatic freeze hit both economies, but Canadian sectors like canola and pork suffered most. China's suspension of canola imports exposed the risks of over-reliance on a single market. Pork and other exports faced similar politically motivated barriers. These disruptions forced Canada to confront the dangers of economic dependence on China. China, meanwhile, saw its own vulnerabilities in global supply chains. Canada responded by challenging China's trade practices at the WTO and tightening scrutiny of Chinese investments. New tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles signal a more defensive trade posture. The mutual economic pain pushed both sides back to the negotiating table. Both now recognize that perpetual conflict is unsustainable. This shared reality underpins the current diplomatic thaw. A major driver of Carney's visit is the uncertainty in North American trade, especially with the upcoming CUSMA review. U.S. protectionism has made trade diversification a national imperative for Canada. Over-reliance on the U.S. market leaves Canada vulnerable to policy shifts and economic downturns. The Carney government is pursuing new trade agreements with Europe and the Asia-Pacific, with China as a central pillar. China's vast middle class offers unparalleled growth potential for Canadian exporters. The challenge is to access this market in a stable, predictable way that aligns with Canadian values. This visit aims to find a new equilibrium, unlocking economic potential while managing risks. Diversifying trade also strengthens Canada's geopolitical autonomy. A balanced portfolio gives Ottawa more flexibility and influence on the world stage. Rebuilding ties with China is about more than exports. It's a strategic move in a multipolar world. The goal is to secure Canada's place as a confident, independent middle power. The stakes are high, but so are the opportunities. This is a pivotal moment for Canada's global strategy. Carney's visit is the result of months of careful diplomatic groundwork. After the Meng Wanzhou case, both sides slowly reactivated channels, starting with technical talks and consular normalization. High-level dialogue resumed at international forums, signaling a willingness to re-engage. Foreign and trade ministers mapped out the agenda for this summit. The rhetoric has softened. Both sides now speak of clear-eyed engagement and mutual interests. This shift reflects a strategic decision to de-escalate and create a positive atmosphere for talks. The thaw is cautious. Both countries remain wary of each other's red lines. Canada insists re-engagement won't mean abandoning principles on human rights or security. China remains sensitive to perceived interference. The current diplomatic dance is about finding balance, cooperation without unrealistic expectations. The mood is one of cautious optimism. This visit could lay a new, more stable foundation for the relationship. Even as disagreements persist, both sides see the value in dialogue. For Canadian exporters, the stakes of this summit are enormous. Restoring stable access to the Chinese market could boost incomes and support rural communities. The resource sector also stands to gain from new contracts and investment. But memories of past trade disruptions make businesses wary of overdependence. The challenge is to seize opportunities in China while diversifying to manage risk. Engagement, not dependence, is the goal. Carney's visit is about striking a balance, pursuing economic gains while protecting national interests and values. A successful reset won't erase all disagreements, but it could create a framework for managing them. Predictability and trust are the new watchwords. The future of Canada-China relations will be a mix of competition, cooperation, and contention. This summit is a crucial step in defining that balance. The outcome will shape Canada's economic and diplomatic trajectory for years. The world is watching to see if a new era can truly begin.